She was 18 years old, broke, and she had just bought a warehouse for $10. Emma stood in front of the building, keys gripped so tightly in her hand that her knuckles had gone white. The metal was cold against her palm, unfamiliar, almost foreign. $3. That's what she had left in her pocket. 3 crumpled bills that wouldn't even buy her dinner tonight. The warehouse loomed in front of her, like something out of a forgotten era. Rust bled down the corrugated metal walls in streaks of orange and brown. Windows on the second floor were either shattered or boarded up with plywood that had warped and splintered over years of neglect. Weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete lot, tall and defiant, reclaiming what had been abandoned. The entire structure sagged slightly to one side, as if it were too tired to stand straight anymore. She couldn't believe this was hers. The auction had been bizarre from the start. She'd found it online 3 days ago, a county liquidation sale for abandoned properties. Most of the listings started at thousands of dollars, but this one, Lot 47, warehouse on Industrial Drive, had a starting bid of $1. She thought it was a typo. She showed up anyway, because what did she have to lose? The auction room was nearly empty. A handful of investors flipping through catalogs, a retired couple looking bored. When Lot 47 came up, the auctioneer's voice had gone flat. He rattled off the address, the square footage, the zoning classification. No one raised their paddle. He waited, cleared his throat, dropped the price to $1. Still nothing. Emma's hand went up before she could stop herself. $10, she said. The auctioneer looked almost relieved. Sold. No one else wanted it. That should have been a warning. But Emma didn't have the luxury of warnings. She didn't have the luxury of anything. She took a step forward, her sneakers crunching on gravel and broken glass. The air smelled like rust and old rain, like metal left out in the elements too long. A gust of wind pushed through the lot, rattling a loose sheet of metal somewhere on the roof. The sound echoed, hollow and lonely. Her hands were shaking now, not from the cold, from everything else, from the weight of the decision she'd just made, from the terror of not knowing if the door would even open, from the possibility that she'd just spent her last $10 on a building, full of nothing, but she had to try. If you're watching this and you feel that pull to see what happens next, hit that subscribe button, tap the like if you're already hooked, and drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know who's on this journey with me. Alright, let's keep going. Emma walked up to the front entrance. The door was steel, painted red once, now faded to a dull rust brown. A chain hung loose from the handle, the padlock already cut by the county before the auction. All that stood between her and the inside was a single keyhole. She slid the key in, her breath caught in her throat. It turned. The lock clicked, a sound so small and so final that it sent a shiver down her spine. She wrapped her fingers around the handle. Cold, solid, real. This was it. Emma pulled the door open. The hinges screamed, a high-pitched shriek of metal on metal that made her wince. Darkness spilled out from the opening, thick and impenetrable. No lights, no movement, just black dot. She stood at the threshold, staring into the void, her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't know what was inside. She didn't know if the floor would hold her weight. She didn't know if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, but she had nothing left to lose. Emma stepped inside. Emma hadn't always been standing in front of a warehouse with $3 to her name, but she'd been heading toward this moment for longer than she cared to admit. She aged out of foster care 3 months ago, 18 years old, no family, no safety net, no one waiting for her on the other side. The system handed her a garbage bag with her belongings, a pamphlet about adult resources, and a handshake from a caseworker who couldn't remember her name. That was it. Good luck out there. She moved through 6 different homes growing up. Some were fine, some weren't. None of them felt permanent. She learned early not to unpack completely, not to get attached to the bedroom or the routine or the people. It always ended. Birthdays came and went. Holidays were spent with strangers who were kind enough to take her in but never quite saw her as theirs. She stopped hoping for adoption somewhere around age 12. By 16, she knew she was on her own, so she worked, stocked shelves at a grocery store after school, saved every dollar she could. When she turned 18, she thought she'd have enough to rent a room somewhere, maybe start community college. She was wrong. The motel was $40 a night, $280 a week. She worked 3 jobs to keep up. Morning shift at a diner, slinging coffee and pancakes to truckers who never tipped. Afternoon stocking shelves at a discount store where the fluorescent lights hummed so loud they gave her headaches. Night shift cleaning offices downtown, emptying trash cans and vacuuming cubicles while the city slept outside the windows. She was exhausted, always. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. She lived off dollar menu meals and vending machine snacks. She hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks, but she kept going, because what else was there? Then the motel raised their rates, $50 a night. She couldn't keep up. She started falling behind. The manager, a man with a beer gut and a permanent scowl, knocked on her door one morning and told her she had 2 weeks, pay up or get out. That's when she saw the ad. She was scrolling through her phone during a break at the diner, mindlessly killing time, when it popped up. County liquidation sale. Abandoned properties. Starting bid, $1. She clicked it, more out of curiosity than anything else. Most of the properties were wrecked houses, vacant lots, buildings condemned by the city. But there it was. Lot 47. Industrial warehouse. Structurally sound, the listing said. Zoning approved for commercial or residential conversion. $1 starting bid. Emma stared at the screen. Her hands were shaking. This was insane. She didn't know anything about real estate. She didn't have money for repairs or inspections or permits. But she also didn't have anywhere else to go. She scraped together $10. It meant skipping meals. It meant walking to work instead of taking the bus. It meant choosing between this auction and paying for another night at the motel. She told her co-worker at the diner about it. The woman laughed. Honey, that's a scam. Nobody sells a warehouse for $1 unless it's falling apart or full of mold or worse. You're gonna lose your money. The motel manager overheard her on the phone trying to get auction details. He snorted. You buy a building. You can't even pay rent. But Emma went anyway. She sat in that auction room with investors in suits and people who actually knew what they were doing. She felt small, out of place, stupid. And when no one else bid, when the auctioneer looked at her like she was doing him a favor by taking it off the county's hands, she knew something was wrong. But she raised her hand anyway, because this warehouse wasn't just a building. It was a chance, maybe her last one. A roof over her head that no one could raise the rent on. A space she could call hers, even if it was broken, even if it was a mistake. And now, standing in the doorway, she realized she might have made the biggest mistake of her life, or the best decision she'd ever make. The air hit her first, thick, stale, heavy with decades of stillness. Emma breathed it in and immediately regretted it. The smell was dust and rust and something else. She couldn't name. Abandonment, maybe. The kind of air that hadn't moved in years. She stepped further inside, letting her eyes adjust to the dimness. Sunlight streamed through broken windows high above, cutting through the darkness in sharp, angled beams. Dust particles drifted through the light like snow falling in slow motion, suspended and weightless. It was almost beautiful, almost peaceful. The main floor stretched out in front of her, far bigger than she'd imagined. The auction photos hadn't done it justice. It was massive, 30 feet high, ceilings, maybe more. Exposed beams crisscrossed overhead, some wrapped in old cobwebs that hung like curtains. The concrete floor was cracked in places, stained with oil and dirt and time, but solid beneath her feet. Empty. Mostly scattered debris littered the space. Broken pallets stacked in a corner, wood rotted and splintered. Old tarps bunched up against the walls, covered in grime. A rusted oil drum tipped on its side. Shards of glass near the windows where panes had shattered and never been replaced. But no machines, no equipment, no signs of what this place used to be. Just emptiness. The silence pressed in on her. No cars outside. No hum of electricity. No distant voices or music or life. Just her footsteps echoing off the walls, sharp and lonely. She walked slowly, carefully, each step deliberate. The sound bounced back to her from every direction, making the space feel both enormous and claustrophobic at the same time. She stopped in the center of the floor and looked up. The ceiling was high, the beams intact. No sagging, no water damage she could see. She walked to the nearest wall and pressed her hand against it. Cold, metal, solid, no give. She knocked on it. The sound rang out clear and strong, structurally sound. Her heart lifted just a little. Maybe this wasn't a disaster. Maybe she could actually do something with this. Clean it out, patch the windows, rent it as storage space or a workshop. People paid for that, didn't they? Maybe she could even live here, section off a corner, make it work. It wasn't legal, probably, but it was hers. A roof, walls, a lock on the door. Hope flickered in her chest. fragile but real. She turned, scanning the rest of the space, planning where she'd start. That's when she saw it. A metal door, far end of the warehouse, tucked into the back wall. She almost missed it. A collapsed shelving unit leaned against it at an angle, rusted and half buried under more tarps and debris. The door itself was dull grey, industrial, no window, and across the handle a padlock, old, thick, covered in rust so deep it looked like it had been there for decades. Emma's pulse quickened. She walked toward it, her footsteps echoing louder, now, faster. She pulled the tarps aside, shoved the shelving unit with her shoulder until it scraped across the concrete and fell away. The door stood exposed now, solid, locked, deliberate. She pulled out the auction papers from her back pocket, unfolded them with shaking hands, and scanned the property description. Main floor, loading bay, office space on second level. No mention of a storage room, no mention of a locked door. Nothing. Emma stared at the padlock. Rust flaked off when she touched it. The metal was cold, the lock heavy and unyielding. Whoever put this here didn't want it opened, didn't want it found. Her breath caught in her throat. She stepped back, her mind racing. Why lock a door inside an abandoned warehouse? Why not mention it in the sale? Why hide it behind shelving and tarps like it was meant to be forgotten? Whatever was behind that door, someone really didn't want it found. Emma stood in front of the metal door, staring at the padlock like it might unlock itself if she waited long enough. It didn't. Single quotes did. She reached out and grabbed it, the rust rough and flaking under her fingers. She pulled hard. The lock didn't budge. The metal shackle was still solid despite the corrosion, still doing its job after all these years. Whoever locked this wanted it to stay locked. She needed tools. Emma turned and scanned the warehouse floor, eyes sweeping over the debris and junk scattered across the concrete. There had to be something. She walked back toward the entrance, kicking aside broken pallets and lifting tarps. Her heart was pounding now, adrenaline pushing her forward. She had to know what was inside. Near the loading bay, half buried under a pile of rotted cardboard, she found it, a crowbar, rusted, pitted with age, but still heavy and solid in her hand. She gripped it tight and walked back to the door. Her hands were shaking. She wedged the curved end of the crowbar into the padlock's shackle, bracing herself against the doorframe for leverage. Why was this room sealed? Why wasn't it mentioned in the auction documents? Her mind raced through possibilities. Could be dangerous, asbestos, mold, structural damage they didn't want to disclose. Or maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just an old storage closet someone forgot about. But if it was nothing, why the lock? Emma hesitated. The crowbar felt heavy in her hands. She could walk away, pretend she never saw it, clean up the main floor, make this place work, and leave the door alone. That would be the smart thing to do, but she'd never been good at smart. She tightened her grip on the crowbar and pulled. The metal groaned. She pulled harder, throwing her weight into it. The lock resisted, rusted but stubborn. Her arms burned, her shoulders screamed, and then snap, the shackle broke free. The padlock clattered to the floor, the sound echoing through the empty warehouse like a gunshot. Emma stumbled back, breathing hard, staring at the door. It was open now, unlocked. All she had to do was pull the handle. If you're still with me, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now, because you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Drop a like if this story has you hooked, and comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I want to know who's here for this. Alright, let's see what's inside. Emma grabbed the door handle. Cold metal, solid. She pulled, the hinges screamed, louder than the front door, a metallic shriek that made her wince. The door swung open slowly, reluctantly, revealing nothing but darkness. No windows, no light, just black. She pulled out her phone, hands still trembling, and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, narrow and bright. She aimed it inside and froze. The room was full. Wall to wall, floor to ceiling, boxes stacked on boxes, wooden crates with faded labels, furniture draped in tarps, shapes she couldn't quite make out, shelves lined with objects she couldn't see clearly from the doorway. It wasn't empty. It wasn't abandoned. It was packed. Her breath caught in her throat. The beam of her flashlight swept across the space, illuminating glimpses of a carved wooden chair leg, the corner of a picture frame, the edge of a trunk with brass hinges. And then she smelled it. Not decay, not rot, not the damp, suffocating smell of mold. Something else. Old leather. aged wood, metal polish, the kind of smell you find in antique stores or estate sales. The smell of things that had value once, things that might still. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. Her mind raced. This wasn't junk. This wasn't debris left behind by neglect. This was stored, hidden, locked away deliberately. She took a breath, steadied herself. She stepped inside, and her entire life was about to change. Emma moved deeper into the storage room, her phone flashlight cutting narrow paths through the darkness. The space was smaller than the main warehouse floor, but still substantial, maybe 20 by 30 feet, and every inch of it was filled. She approached the nearest top, a heavy canvas sheet draped over something large and rectangular. Dust puffed into the air as she grabbed the edge and pulled it back. The fabric fell away, and she gasped. A desk, but not just any desk. Vintage, wooden, dark mahogany, maybe, with carved legs that curved elegantly toward claw feet. The surface was smooth, polished once, still holding a faint luster, despite years of storage. Brass handles adorned the drawers, ornate and untarnished. It was beautiful, the kind of piece you'd see in a museum or an estate sale, with a price tag in the thousands. Her heart started to race. She moved to another top, yanked it down. An antique mirror leaned against the wall beneath it, gold-framed, the metalwork intricate and delicate, vines and flowers twisting around the edges. The glass was intact, slightly foggy with age, but She stared at her reflection in the dim light, her face pale and wide-eyed. This wasn't junk, this was treasure. Emma's hands shook as she moved to a stack of cardboard boxes, old and brittle, the corners reinforced with packing tape that had yellowed and cracked. She opened the top one carefully. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, were books. Old leather-bound books with embossed covers. She lifted one out, brushing dust from the spine. The title was stamped in faded gold lettering, a first edition. She realized. She opened another box. More books. Classic literature, some with publication dates from the 1920s and 30s. Her breath came faster now. She moved to another box, opened it. Vintage cameras, 3 of them, nestled in foam padding, metal bodies, leather cases, lenses still clear, pristine condition, the kind collectors paid serious money for. Emma stood frozen in the middle of the room, her mind spinning. Why was this here? Why was it locked away? Why would anyone abandon something like this? None of it made sense. She swept her flashlight across the rest of the space. More furniture, a rolled-up rug, wooden crates with military metal trunks with brass latches, and in the corner, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes, a small wooden chest. She walked over, knelt down, and pulled it toward her. It was heavy, solid, with iron corners and a simple latch, locked, but not with a padlock, just a clasp. She wedged her fingers under it and pulled. The latch snapped open with a sharp click. Emma lifted the lid. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, black and white, edges worn, some curling with age. She picked up the first one, a family portrait, formal, posed, a man in a military uniform, standing tall and serious, his jaw set, eyes forward. Beside him, a woman in a floral dress, her hand resting on the shoulder of a small child, a little girl, maybe 3 or 4, with ribbons in her hair. Emma flipped through more photos. The same man in different uniforms, different settings. One with a group of soldiers, arms slung over each other's shoulders, smiling. Another of the woman alone, holding a baby wrapped in a blanket, her face tired but glowing. A family, a life, frozen in time. Her throat tightened. She set the photos aside carefully and looked back into the chest. At the bottom, beneath the photographs, was a piece of paper, yellowed with age, folded in thirds, delicate, fragile, like it might crumble if she breathed on it too hard. Emma picked it up, her fingers gentle, reverent. She unfolded the letter, and her hands began to tremble. The paper felt fragile in Emma's hands, the edges soft and worn. She angled her phone flashlight closer, illuminating the faded handwriting, cursive, careful. The ink had browned with age, but the words were still clear. She read silently, her lips moving as her eyes traced each line. May 14th, 1953. To whoever finds this, my name is Thomas Brennan. I am storing my family's belongings in this warehouse before I deploy overseas with the 7th Infantry Division. I've arranged for the rent to be paid through a trust fund for as long as needed. I don't know when I'll be back, but I will be back. Everything in this room is what I couldn't take with me. The desk belonged to my father. He built furniture before the Depression took his shop. The mirror was my mother's, brought over from Ireland when she was a girl. The books are mine, collected since I was a boy. My wife's jewelry is here, packed carefully. Our daughter's toys, the photographs of everyone I'm leaving behind. I wanted to take it all. I wanted to stay, but some things you can't carry into war, and some duties you can't refuse. If you're reading this, it means I made it back and forgot to remove it, or it means I didn't make it back at all. If it's the latter, I hope my family claimed these things. I hope they know I never stopped thinking about them. This isn't just furniture and books. It's a lifetime. Please treat it with care. Thomas Brennan. Emma's vision blurred. She blinked, and tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and sudden. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, but more came. Thomas never came back. She knew it without needing confirmation. If he had, this room wouldn't still be here, locked and forgotten. If he had, his family would have claimed everything. The desk, the mirror, the photographs, all of it. But they didn't, which meant they couldn't, or didn't know, or were never told. The warehouse had been paid for through a trust fund. Decades, maybe, until the money ran out. Until the county seized it and sold it at auction for $10 because no one wanted the liability. No heirs ever came forward. No one claimed it. Emma sat back on her heels, the letter still clutched in her hands. Her chest felt tight, aching. This room wasn't just storage. It was a time capsule. A life paused, waiting for someone who never returned. The furniture from his childhood home, his parents' belongings, his wife's jewelry, his daughter's toys, everything he couldn't take to war, everything he thought he'd come back to. And now it was hers. She looked around the room with new eyes. Every box, every top, every piece of furniture, it all belonged to someone once. Someone who loved it. Someone who thought they'd see it again. Thomas had stored his entire world here. His past, his family's history, the things that mattered most. And he'd walked away, believing he'd return. But he never did. Emma's throat burned. She pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes, trying to hold herself together. This wasn't just stuff. It wasn't just treasure she could sell or profit from. It was a family's frozen history, a man's last attempt to protect what he loved before stepping into the unknown. And he'd trusted that it would be here when he got back. She folded the letter carefully, reverently, and set it back in the chest. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart felt heavy and full at the same time. But as she dug deeper, she realized Thomas left behind more than memories. Emma wiped her eyes and stood up. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. She needed to understand what she was dealing with. She needed to see everything. She started systematically opening boxes, one by one, cataloging what Thomas had left behind. The first box she opened held watches, 3 of them, each in its own velvet-lined case. She lifted one out carefully. Heavy, gold, the face read Rolex Oyster, Perpetual. She turned it over, engraved on the back, to Thomas, with love, Helen, 1950. Her breath hitched. She opened the second case, an Omega Seamaster, polished steel, immaculate. The third was another Rolex, older. The leather strap cracked, but the watch itself, pristine, thousands of dollars. Each. She set them aside and moved to the next box. Jewelry, rings, wrapped in tissue paper, necklaces with delicate chains, a brooch shaped like a flower, the petals set with tiny rubies, earrings with emeralds that caught the light even in the dimness. These weren't costume pieces. These were real, valuable. Emma's heart pounded. She opened another box, a metal tin, military issued, the paint chipped. Inside were coins, rare coins. She recognized a few silver dollars, buffalo nickels, some so old the dates were barely legible, all in mint condition, preserved carefully in individual sleeves. She moved faster now, pulling open crate after crate. Military medals in a wooden case, ribbons pinned to felt backing, a purple heart, a bronze star, dog tags on a beaded chain, the metal worn smooth. Thomas J. Brennan, O+ blood type, Catholic. Her hands trembled as she set them down. She found a small painting wrapped in brown paper, tucked between 2 larger crates. She unwrapped it carefully. It was small, maybe 12 by 16 inches. A landscape, soft brushstrokes, muted colors, no signature she could see, but the style was distinctive, impressionistic, American maybe. She pulled out her phone and photographed it, opened a reverse image search app, uploaded the photo, waited. The loading icon spun, and spun, and spun. Her pulse thudded in her ears. The screen refreshed. Possible match: American Impressionist, circa 1940s. Similar works by regional artists of the period. Estimated value, $15,000, $50,000, depending on provenance and condition. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the painting in her hands. 15,000, 50,000, for something the size of a textbook. She was sitting on a fortune. The watches, the jewelry, the coins, the medals, the painting, add it all up, and it was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. More than enough to change everything. Pay off debt, get an apartment, go to school, start over. But as she stood there, surrounded by boxes and memories, and a dead man's carefully preserved life, it didn't feel like a windfall. It felt like a weight. This wasn't just money. This was someone's life, someone's legacy. Thomas had stored his most valuable possessions here, trusting they'd be safe, trusting he'd come back, and when he didn't, they'd just sat here, waiting, forgotten that she felt the responsibility of it settle over her like a heavy blanket. What was she supposed to do with all of this? Sell it? Keep it? Try to find his family? Did he even have family left? Emma turned slowly, scanning the room. She'd opened most of the boxes now, seen most of what was here, but in the far corner, partially hidden behind the rolled-up rug, there was one more box, smaller than the others, plain wood, no markings. She walked over and knelt down in front of it, and then she found the last box, the one that changed everything. The last box was small, wooden, plain. A brass latch held it closed, tarnished green with age but still functional. Emma's fingers fumbled with it, her hands shaking from exhaustion and emotion. The latch resisted, then gave way with a soft click. She lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of letters, maybe 20 of them, bound together with twine that had frayed and darkened over the decades. Emma lifted the bundle carefully, feeling the weight of them in her hands. Envelopes, old, yellowed, addressed. In different handwriting. She untied the string and spread them out on the floor. Every single one was addressed to Thomas Brennan, care of the 7th Infantry Division. APO addresses, military routing codes, but stamped across each envelope, in bold red ink, were the same words: returned to sender, deceased. Emma's stomach dropped. She picked up the first letter. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, feminine. She turned it over. The return address read Helen Brennan, his wife. She opened it, sliding the letter out carefully. The paper was delicate, the ink faded but still legible. My darling Thomas, it's been 6 months since you left. Margaret asks about you every day. I tell her you're coming home soon. I don't know if that's true anymore. Your letters stopped 3 months ago. I don't know if you're getting mine. I don't know if you're even. Please write back. Please, just tell me you're alive. I love you. We miss you. Emma's vision blurred. She set the letter down and picked up another, same handwriting, dated 2 months later. Thomas, why won't you write? Did we do something wrong? Margaret cries at night. She thinks you forgot about us. I don't know what to tell her anymore. Please, just one letter. That's all I need. Emma's hands shook. She picked up another envelope, different handwriting this time. Childish, uneven letters. Dear Daddy, Mummy says you are busy. Are you coming home for my birthday? I drew you a picture. I miss you. Love. Margaretta. Tears slid down Emma's cheek. She wiped it away and kept going. Letter after letter. Helen's handwriting growing more desperate. Margaret's letters fewer and simpler. And then, near the bottom of the stack, the tone changed. Thomas, I don't know why you won't respond. I don't know what I did, but I can't keep waiting. Margaret needs stability. I need to move on. If you ever cared about us, you would have written back. Goodbye. Helen. The last letter from Margaret was brief. I hate you for leaving us. Emma's chest tightened. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in her throat. They thought he abandoned them. They thought he just stopped caring, stopped writing, stopped coming home. They never knew. If you're still watching, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, because I need to know I'm not alone in feeling this. Alright, let's finish this. Emma set the letters aside, her hands trembling. She looked back into the box. At the very bottom, beneath where the letters had been, was a single piece of paper, thicker than the others, folded once. She pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. A will, handwritten, signed and dated. Last Will and Testament of Thomas James Brennan. I, Thomas James Brennan, being of sound mind, do hereby leave all my possessions, property, and assets to my daughter, Margaret Helen Brennan, should I not return from deployment. Everything stored in the warehouse on Industrial Drive is to be given to her upon her 18th birthday. All my love. Thomas J. Brennan, May 12, 1953. Emma stared at the words, Margaret. He left everything to Margaret, his daughter, the little girl in the photographs, the one who thought he abandoned her. But Margaret never knew, she never came, she was never found. Emma collapsed, sitting hard on the concrete floor. The will slipped from her fingers, tears poured down her face, hot and relentless. She couldn't stop them, didn't try. This family was torn apart by war, by miscommunication, by loss. Thomas died believing his letters were reaching them. Helen and Margaret lived believing he stopped caring. And now, 70 years later, Emma held the proof that none of it was true. Thomas never abandoned them. He died, and no one told them. Emma buried her face in her hands and sobbed. For Thomas, for Helen, for Margaret, for a family destroyed by circumstances they couldn't control. And now she held the only proof that could change the story. Emma made a decision that night. This wasn't hers to keep, but finding the truth would cost everything she had. Emma didn't sleep that night, or the next. She couldn't. She sat on the concrete floor of the warehouse, surrounded by Thomas's belongings. The letters spread out in front of her, and she made a plan. She had to find Margaret, or if Margaret was gone, and she probably was, given the timeline, she had to find her children, her family, someone who deserved to know the truth. She started with what little money she had left, $23 in her account. She skipped meals, picked up an extra shift at the diner, scraped together enough to hire a genealogist, retired librarian, who did family research on the side for $50 a search. The woman came back 3 days later with a report. Margaret Helen Brennan, born 1948, married in 1967 to a man named David Cho, one daughter. Margaret herself had passed away in 2003, but her daughter was alive. Emma's heart raced. She searched public records, posted in military family forums, combed through ancestry websites and obituaries and social media. Weeks passed, dead ends piled up. Margaret's daughter had remarried, changed her name. The trail went cold. Then a breakthrough. A response on a military genealogy forum. Someone had seen Emma's post, knew the family. Margaret's daughter was named Sarah. Sarah Cho Martinez, now living in Colorado. A phone number, an email. That Emma stared at the screen, her hands shaking. This was it. She drafted an email, deleted it, wrote another, deleted that too. How do you tell someone their entire understanding of their family history is wrong? Finally, she just wrote the truth. Dear Sarah, my name is Emma. I recently purchased a warehouse that belonged to your grandfather, Thomas Brennan. Inside, I found belongings he stored before deploying in 1953. I also found letters, a will, and proof that he never stopped trying to reach your grandmother and mother. I think you need to see this. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. 2 days later, her phone rang. Unknown number, Colorado area code. Emma answered, her voice shaking. Hello, is this Emma? The voice was older, careful, guarded, double quotes. Yes. Is this Sarah? A pause. You said you found my grandfather's belongings. I did. I have everything, letters, photographs, his dog tags, a will leaving everything to your mother. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, my mother thought he abandoned them. Emma's throat tightened. I know, but he didn't. He wrote letters. They were all returned. He died overseas. No one told them. Another long pause. Then Sarah's voice cracked. Are you serious? I'm serious. I have proof. Photos of the letters, the return stamps, everything. Sarah broke down. Emma heard her crying through the phone, muffled sobs she was trying to control. When she finally spoke again, her voice was raw. My whole life, my mother hated him. She told me he just left, that he didn't care. I grew up believing my grandfather was a coward who abandoned his family. Emma's eyes burned. He wasn't. He loved them. He stored everything he owned so it would be waiting when he got back. He just never made it. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, can I see it? The letters, the photos. Yes, I'll send you pictures right now. Emma spent the next hour photographing everything. The letters, the will, the dog tags, The family photos, she sent them all. Waited. Her phone rang again 20 minutes later. Sarah was crying harder now, gasping through her words. He never forgot us. Never. Emma whispered. Not for a second. They arranged to meet. Emma couldn't afford a plane ticket, so Sarah drove 18 hours across 3 states. She arrived 2 days later, pulling up to the warehouse in a rental car, her face pale and drawn. Emma met her at the door. She'd prepared a small box, the dog tags, one of the family photographs, Helen's last letter. Sarah took the box with trembling hands, opened it slowly, lifted out the dog tags, and collapsed. Emma caught her, held her while she sobbed, clutching the metal tags like they were the most precious thing in the world. He was real, Sarah whispered. He was real and he loved us. He did, Emma said, tears streaming down her own face. They sat on the warehouse floor together, 2 strangers bound by a story 70 years in the making. Sarah held the photograph of Thomas in his uniform, tracing his face with her finger, and then she told Emma something that made everything worth it. Keep it, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. The warehouse, the belongings, all of it. You gave me back my grandfather. That's worth more than any of this. Emma tried to refuse. It felt wrong, but Sarah wouldn't hear it. She took only what mattered: the letters, the photographs, the dog tags. The rest, she insisted, was Emma's. Emma sold the antiques ethically, the watches, the jewelry, the painting, enough to renovate the warehouse, to build something lasting. She kept a few pieces: the desk, the mirror, things that felt too important to let go. She transformed the space, part community center, part museum, a place that honored Thomas's story while serving the neighborhood. She displayed the photographs, told his story on plaques mounted to the walls. The local news covered it. Sarah attended the opening, standing beside Emma as they cut the ribbon. Together, Emma stood in the same spot where she'd stood months ago, broke, hopeless, terrified, keys trembling in her hand. Now she was stable, purposeful, free. The warehouse that cost $10 had given her more than money. It gave her a mission, a home, and proof that even in the darkest moments, hope can be hidden in the most unexpected places. She was 18 years old, broke, and she bought a warehouse for $10. And in the end, it wasn't what she found inside that changed her life. It was what she chose to do with it.